Do we know how many people are joined?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Nice being here after waiting for a while. Welcome to our panel discussion about leadership for engineering teams in a remote work era. I think that for everyone, the last 2 years were very challenging, but also very educating and interesting, and also introduced us new opportunities and new challenges. So let's hear all about it. We'll start with a short introduction, and then let's talk. Yeah. Ginatra, you want to start?
I can go first. My name is Gintarė. I'm software engineering manager at Rocket Software, Lithuania, and currently running a team of 10 talents spanned across all over the world, I would like to say, but actually that's Lithuania and the US. So that's about me. Leaving job things aside, I love salsa dancing, enjoy traveling as most people do, and obviously I really love working from home. So hopefully you'll enjoy this discussion coming up.
Great. Giovanni?
Hi, I'm Giovanni. I'm Italian, but I live in London. I've been here for more than 20 years now. I'm a CTO of a company called Launch Ventures, which is currently based in India, but we have customers everywhere. It's a software engineering company, as we like to call ourselves. But I'm also doing some consulting as, until recently, I was head of engineering in a company called OLX, and now I'm moving sideways as head of architecture. What else? I've been working as developer, consultant, architect, and whatnot in software for almost 30 years. Yeah, particular things I do when I'm not working, I just do whatever my wife and children tell me to do. Okay, go next.
Yeah, go Kosuke.
Okay, yeah, so all right, so I'm Kosuke, or people call me KK, because apparently this name is not very easy to pronounce for the people in the rest of the world. I grew up in Tokyo. I've been living in California for past 20 years. And in those 20 years, I probably is best known, I'm best known as a guy who created Jenkins, which is our popular open source software. I worked I served as the CTO of the CloudBees, which built a business around it. And for the past 3 years, I launched another startup called Launchable, and we are focusing on data-enabled developer productivity. So that's my work. And aside from work, I have a lot of hobbies here, all the Legos, all the model making. I've been cycling a lot. I'm going to be riding from San Francisco to LA in a month or so. Yeah, so that's me.
Okay, very cool. Angel?
Great. I'm going now. My name is Ángel Díaz Maroto. I'm from Spain. My background is in software development, but now I work as an Agile coach and trainer in my own company that is called Díaz Maroto Agile Coaching. I've been 15 years already working in the field of Agile, already more than 40 countries. And I have all the possible certifications in the Scrum Alliance, CST, CEC, Kaggle Educator, etc. And I also love salsa dancing. So I'm most probably we've seen each other in any salsa party there in.
Yeah, we'll have to catch up later on.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
I wonder if there is also virtual salsa dancing conference.
Small world.
Okay. And Rosa?
Yeah, I actually also love to salsa dance. But yeah, so I'm Rosa. I am the director of talent experience at Andela. What we do is we connect developers with global opportunities to work with enterprise companies, work on interesting projects, and I lead the community, our developer community, which is exciting. My whole job is to make the developer experience end to end amazing, which is really fun. I'm Irish and based in Belfast, so for once it's not raining in Ireland, which is always nice. It's rare though.
Just to make sure, Giovanni, you're not telling me that you are also into salsa dancing, right? Then I feel like I'm the wrong guy.
No. My daughters tell me not to even try dancing because I'm ridiculous. This is what they tell me.
Okay. Yeah, so I also didn't introduce myself. My name is Tom Ron. I am engineering team lead at LinksMD, and we are building a medical data science platform that is collaborative and safe and privacy preserving in order to make health data accessible for richer research and quicker development of therapeutic and holistic solutions. Okay, so so we learned a lot in the last 2 years about remote working and leadership. And what do you think is the most important skill for leadership in this era? And how they differ from working in a collocated space, if at all?
All right, so
I can go first. I'll put my, so I don't know if it is really a skill this, but I think is the, especially for someone in a leadership position, is the ability to trust their team. So if you are unable to trust the people you are working with, you have a problem. Yeah. I think it's a problem in the office, but at least there you can see people. You have some comfort somehow. But when you are remote, things change. So you are always, sometimes you feel in the dark. Yeah, of what is happening. So if you don't have this skill of this ability to trust your people, you just lose. This is my view.
I totally agree. For the trust, I think that's the key. I would also add inclusion and engagement, especially for the new joiners in the team. It's so easily we can become detached, and it's especially for newer members of the team. So as a leadership member, we have to make sure that we stay connected, that we have regular check-ins, not to micromanage and not to say that we are untrusting, but just to ensure that everyone is engaged, everyone is being heard, and we are still continuing to work as a team.
Yeah, I think that kind of idea of trust is immensely important. And I think as leaders, I think one of the big things as well is around like being able to translate and communicate goals and like being really, really clear about that so that people know what they're working on. Then you can trust them to do it, right? And so, surprised that no one's mentioned it, but I think written communication becomes really important, at least in remote companies where you might be working globally and come into play. So I think written communication, being able to get that right, and also being tuned into other teams, like connecting with other leaders, knowing that you're helping to connect the dots so that your team can get on with what they need to do, but that you're kind of looking that one step ahead as well. I think it's really important in remote to be very intentional about that, about connecting across the organization.
Yeah, culture writing, that's something I feel a lot about. I think because in the past 2 companies, it was a remote first company for us. So like we intentionally were able to create this expectation that you're supposed to, write down your thought, and that's how you clarify that and crystallize that, and also make decisions. So we don't really like make decisions in meetings, but we can more like, hey, I'm gonna try to record this as a decision and then sign off and so on. So that feels like it works more effectively in a remote team.
I like to say first something about trust, because specifically I'm going to talk about trust later in my talk, which because it's very important for me that we create trust or trustworthy environment with the intention. We can't ask people for naive trust. Just trust me just because you have to trust people. It's not how trust work. You have to consciously create a trustworthy environment. And I think this becomes even more relevant in the online world, particularly because it's more difficult to listen commitment. So you have to be like more refined on your understanding of what's going on in the dynamic of the teams when you actually can't see them physically, because we didn't learn how to listen some specific elements about the human interactions online. We still need to learn how to read those. Yeah. So body language, tone, position, disposition is something that is really difficult to learn online. When people say, yeah, I commit, there is no true commitment happening. So particularly cameras and off, that's very, very, very risky. So I think that the first thing that the leaders should consider when online work is happening is that the relationship should be reframed so they are compatible with the new environment. So like as simple as having new working agreements, or not just continue the same way you were working as a leader before. You have to reconsider your relationship because it's going to be very different.
Okay, so I want to pick this point and connect it with Gintar's point about keeping people engaged. How do you do that?
I can perhaps continue on that engagement part, and that also links into that communication. I think something to bear in mind is the importance of that asynchronous communication, whereas we don't have people 1 meter apart, and we have to make sure that we communicate effectively across, so embracing various communication channels and platforms and tools to allow that communication, working across different locations, different time zones, or sometimes having only a couple of hours of overlap if we are lucky enough of a common time, so to ensure that we are making the most out of that. But as far as engagement is concerned, leaving the direct day-to-day role responsibilities as a leadership team member, I think it's important to have that social element and that human element, and even if that's setting up a coffee break or some sort of virtual checking in, a catch up, which isn't to talk about projects necessarily or some work commitments, but just general check how people are getting on, how they're feeling, because it's so we don't get to see people that often, and referencing that back to that point that we don't necessarily see the reactions, body language, etc. It's so easily to lose that momentum and not to capture, if things aren't going too well.
Yeah, at my previous company, even though the company was remote and global, at least we counted on, occasionally meeting in the real space. And that was a key part of building the trust and the engage. And like that kind of carries on over the monitor screen, the computer screens. But in the past 2 years, that we couldn't do that. And that was a much harder challenge indeed. So I felt like we created more structured, it's kind of an oxymoron, but the structured social engagement. So, like a coffee time, as already mentioned. But another thing we started doing is like a monthly kind of like, push yourself outside a little comfort zone day. We call it Rocket Fuel Day. But the idea is like, like this day, we want you to go out to see a movie and then like write about it. And it's like try to do things that you don't normally do in the workplace. And I felt like that's an integral, important part of trying to, like fix some of the things that was lost.
I love that. I think I'm going to steal a Rocket Fuel Day.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I think today is so important, right? To keep people engaged. Like you need to connect with your colleagues outside of what your day-to-day tasks are. My team, we tend to play games about once a month, and every month is someone new will take over. But I think as well, inside work, like kind of having the other two P's come into play, like purpose and passion. So like, are people in the right role for what they want to do? Do they feel connected with the purpose of either the company or the team? I think those are really, really critical to having success. So having those three kind of P's come into play is really, really important. And I certainly think you see teams thrive if everyone is hitting stride at the same time. You have like norming, forming, storming, that kind of mentality as well with teams. And when you get that right and you're in the storming phase, nothing feels better, I think. And a lot of people are really connected with each other. So you see things happening towards the purpose, but that hasn't necessarily been written down as like a exact goal. And it's really lovely to see that kind of organically, people fixing things and creating projects that are really aligned, and just moving towards that common shared goal.
Yeah, actually, that is a very good point, because I think I personally don't have a structured way to engage with people. I tend to, for example, even formal meetings for work, usually start with some chit chat, checking in, seeing how things go, things like this. But then the common purpose. So earlier today, I spoke about an experience report on some mob programming we did on the COVID-19 app system here in England and Wales. I was in the technical leadership of that. One of the systems I led, we were a fully distributed team. We were people that we didn't know each other. We didn't know of each other, okay? Team set up, in 4 weeks, we delivered something that just worked. In between, somehow, having a very clear goal and a common purpose helped a lot to really be engaged from, day one. So actually, we ended up not only working, but sometimes staying even a bit longer to have a chat at the end of a 12-hour day to do stuff. So I think that several elements there. Yeah. So definitely having a common purpose, as Rosa said, is one. But then I think there is also other stuff. So for example, when I was doing this head of engineering role in a company, as is an interim role as a consultant, something I did was immediately, first thing, I always meet my teams. I don't care about anybody else. So if I'm head of engineering of a number of teams, I talk with the people that they do the work first, because I'm overhead. Yeah, they do the work. I have to do something. And I make my presence felt. So in terms of, I make clear that I'm there for them. If they need anything from me, they can call me at any time. It's no need for escalation or anything. Sometimes they need help for something, which is fine. And then you do what you mean. And this helps people also a lot. So basically, you're helping creating an environment where people can actually ask for help, connect, feel appreciated, all these kind of things. Of course, you cannot do that alone, but you can help in getting there. Yeah. And what I've seen is that is not absolutely necessary to have special events for engaging if you have that and people know what they are doing somehow. Yeah. I don't know if this is clear. So it's not necessarily the special day to do this or to do that. Is a collection of things that you do every day, basically.
Yeah, I guess it's not. I don't need it as either or thing. Yeah, but every bit of opportunity is useful, I think.
I like to say though that different people would behave differently to online world. Some people are okay, even enjoying it a lot, not having to be closer to other human beings, and some other people will really miss it. Yeah, me personally, I really miss in-person interactions because I'm like that. And something that I learned is that they said, when you were kids, treat people as you would like to be treated. I think it's a bad idea. It's better treat people as they would like to be treated. So it's like often we say, okay, for me, online world, it's okay. So it should be okay also for my team. Well, maybe for some it will, but for others it will be terrible. So I think it's critical to ask what do they need, what do they miss, and try to provide. Because some person would say it would be great to play online, and some other person would say, no, after work I want to be with my family, I want to spend time with you guys. Sorry, with me it's enough to be at work. So I wouldn't force anything into people, but more like asking. As I said before, I think that asking and listening becomes even more difficult and more relevant in online world, because people might be missing some pieces of the interactions and we might not be noticing those. So I think it's critical to ask frequently, individually, what do you need that you had before and now you don't have? How can we get closer to that if possible?
So I think you can ask, and you also, there is also sometimes an issue on how your question is interpreted by the person who you asked and how they receive it. And you might know it for people you work with in the past, But how do you do that with new hires, people that you're onboarding now and remotely, and how do you get to know them?
Again, ask. Also, is there a possibility to change? I think, I mean, there is actually something that it was happening in my company. We were hiring a new person, and part of the interview was, would you prefer to work at home or work here? Right? Or hybrid or a mix. Yeah. Or some of them were like, I don't know. I really don't know. So, and the question is, what would you like to try first? Right? And out of that, we got more information and change that. So this frequent asking and getting frequent feedback, it becomes again more relevant in the online world, right? If it's possible to be engaged. Me myself, I love online video games. Still, I have some time to play video games, and you can get engaged and have friends online to a certain level. Yeah, but maybe for some activities it's possible, but for others, like I wouldn't see myself engaged with an online group of salsa dancers. some other stuff, some other things you really need in-person interactions, right? So yeah, asking frequent feedback.
I think to that thing around like onboarding as well and getting to know new people. I think there's like one actually very practical exercise that I do with my team, and I think it's really useful, but it does change over time, so it's important to like check in. Is this kind of manual of me, which is like, how do I like to work? You know, where do I like to work? What kind of environment? Like, what's the best way to contact me? How do I? And then also things like my strengths, things that I like, things that I don't like, and just being upfront about these kind of things. And like we talk them through in like a fun way as a whole team to like get to know each other a little bit. And we also blend like work with like personal. So things I like, salsa dancing has been brought up many times, watching my local football team. Things I don't like, you know, when people cook for me and thing, you know, like I don't know what that would be. But like I think that's a really nice thing that you can do as a team as well, like not just having those individual connections. But I think as well, like one thing I find, especially with say onboarding people that you don't actually know outside of the interview process, like what I've done is like definitely increase the amount of check-ins that you would have at the start of their journey, just to start to have like that kind of clarifying point of like, what have you found out? Like, what questions do you have? Because you know, when you're starting to learn a new company or somewhere new, like, or a new role, like there's constantly questions as you're starting to talk with different members of the team or talk to different people in the company. It's like, well, I found out this today, and isn't this crazy? And this kind of challenged my thought. And having that debrief almost at the end of the day is a really nice thing I've found, and an easy way to get into your rhythm of talking to one another, building trust. And then, for example, you know, from then on out, they might be more comfortable coming to you directly with issues or problems as they kind of get down the line. And that's something I found that works, I think, well in a remote environment, just so that you have time for that kind of personal get to know you piece, as well as like the work that's going on too.
On top of what you said, sorry.
No,
I wanted to say one thing on top of what Rosa's statement, which is super important, which is we should consider the person is behind. So somebody might be, I don't know, single, doesn't have much to do, and then spend a lot of time, a lot of hours working, and we say that that's great, but might be terrible. Somebody maybe is very disorganized, and they like to go to the gym late in the night, and then they're awake and they work during the very late hours. Some other person have several kids, and it's a mess. Try to work, doesn't want to tell you that it's not possible for the person to be effective at work. She will just try to cover it up. So all that elements become even more relevant, that Rosa said. No, sorry,
I totally.
Giovanni.
I'm sorry if I disappeared for a bit, not unusual, I got technical issues with everything freezing up, but I totally agree that there is no one size fits all. We have different people, different circumstances. Some people concentrate whilst we are at work. Some people like to work in isolation and home environment, etc., etc. So I don't think there is one correct answer, and we cannot force everyone to feel exactly the same. So it's totally right to try and see the world from other people's lenses and put ourselves in their shoes. So there wouldn't be a single sort of answer, a single way of working that works for everyone in the team.
Yeah, but there is something I encourage my software development teams, at least. People that do different jobs have different needs. But with developers, something I really encourage my teams is to work, to pair or to mob. Basically, that is extremely useful also for onboarding. New people at least have a constant presence of someone else. So it's not like I'm alone at home. I have no idea what to do or who to call now. What should I be doing now? Of course, for some people might not be the ideal situation, but also for software development, we also need to keep in mind that really the time of solo heroes doing their own thing are over. Yeah, because that could bring an entire class of problems by itself. But definitely, I think what is important is that, especially for onboarding, that people know that there is someone they can contact and they will have immediate answer. Yeah, it's not like send a message on Slack and then 4 hours later, oh, sorry, I didn't see that. And then you are there alone. Yeah, so there is a need of being able to have quick answers, yeah, somehow, and feel the presence of your colleagues, I think. And when you are onboarding, when you just join a company, I think is particularly important.
Yeah, you mentioned about the pair programming. That's something we encourage, especially earlier as they join. Because we tell them like they should ask questions if they're stuck on something, but there's always some more hesitations. And if you're on the pair programming setup, the other guy can spot that instantaneously. So I find that effective. Also to build some kind of rapport. You're not, when you're pair programming, you're not always talking about just the code in front of you. So that especially when you bring somebody from a different culture, different company, used to different tool sets and a different way of working, it's been tremendously useful. And looking back at my own team, I feel like in the pandemic era, I think we are doing definitely more structured onboarding. So in that within cultural company, there's tons of materials that people can look at. So we point to them, create a long list of checkboxes that they can, that could go through, and that's been generally well received, I think. But some people from different kind of, say what they discovered is like surfing up like a Slack driven company, right? There's some companies in which like everything gets done over chat, and when they come over to our team and like doing used to like more Confluence driven thing, like I watch them struggle. So it's kind of interesting that there's some people needs to, like a learning needs to happen. I can't quite put the finger on like how to help.
Now that you mentioned Slack, I have to say that I struggle with things like Slack with 150 channels, and people say, well, you didn't see that, I wrote this in this channel, sorry. So one of the things I tell people about the manual on how to work with me is, actually say this to people: if you want to attract my attention on Slack, you tag me, because otherwise, if almost 100%, I won't read the message. So unless then the magic number appears on my icon saying somebody's looking for you, I simply don't have the bandwidth to read all the channels. Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to say also that I think is important in this distributed environment, talk, interacting with people, is also having, I think, more empathy than when you work in the office, because things happen, small houses, family, children popping up, dogs, things. So and also we are more likely to work with people from different cultures anyway, because now that we are all online, we work distributed in countries, and so different habits or expectations. So we need to be able to adapt to other expectations and habits as well without judging them. Yeah, and at the beginning can be a bit difficult, but then you can get used to that. But if you are not used to that, it can be problematic. Yeah.
So I totally agree that you should be sensitive for inclusion and diversity, and ask, as Angel mentioned. And I want to ask a question, since you mentioned Slack as a tool. I want to ask a question from the audience. So what do you think about using tools like Microsoft Mesh, a hologram meeting? Could such tools increase people interaction and online communication itself?
Did any of us have any of us
I
used it?
have no
haven't.
experience with those tools at all, so I cannot comment on that. All I can say is that if I want to attract attention, I use Slack like a telephone. You know, I ring the other person if I need immediate answer.
Knock his door.
Yeah, basically it's that. And nobody's used to that. I know that it's a bit naughty, but then if I really need something immediate.
I think it's good just to establish ways of working and communication. And for some, it might be a phone call. For the others, Slack and Microsoft tools and the cutting edge tools, which we don't have experience of. Is obviously we have to keep on top with those tools, but just setting the expectations, I think it really works, and it works both ways.
So I think I mentioned earlier, like our company, like a writing culture, which means like most of the things happen on Confluence. But the one thing that does not seem to happen on Confluence, this like a spontaneous feeling of conversation that neither parties expected where it ended up, and that when that happens, people feel great. And so far, like that only seems to happen on Slack, which however means the people in a different time zone doesn't get to do it, and that's the really kind of painful
I was
part.
thinking about your Slack channels just blowing up with gifs of like
yeah well at least some channels, yes, and that's okay. But yeah, what was I trying to say? Actually, I want to throw in one thing. So in retrospectively, I feel like the open source project was a great extreme example of highly distributed, like the remote organizations in which like I cannot even tell people to do anything. Like they only show up because they care about the same mission. And so while that's not how you run the company, but to be able to kind of use that as one of the reference anchor points in this extreme and try to steal some of the things back into the workplace, that has been very fruitful for me.
Do you think that open source contributors are more likely to be efficient in remote working because they're already?
Yeah, because I mean, they, for better or worse, like we come up with the way of mode of work where like it basically minimizes the communication, right? I mean, nobody show up to the open source project wanting to have meetings or discuss their design ideas. They have to do some extent, but not like as little as possible. So again, it's an extreme, but it's a useful example to think of.
Okay. So we discussed a bit on onboarding, and I feel that we mainly talked about ideas about onboarding of ICs, but for managers, for onboarding managers remotely, what would be your winning tip for them? Or what would you do if you had to start a new position today remotely?
I can tell you what I did when I started this interim head of engineering position, which was a management position. So I had 6 engineering managers reporting to me, and I had also line management duties, which was a first in my career, and I didn't quite like that. But anyway, apart from this this aspect, what I did was actually on day one, as soon as I joined, I met immediately the people that were supposed to report to me. That's the very first thing. I didn't even care about other stakeholders there. It's because I'm going to work with those people. Yeah. And so I wanted to be there immediately, get to know them, start to have an interaction of sorts. I also actually, I did get prepared with some questions to ask them and to ask the teams and to ask also senior stakeholders to understand the situation in the company, but also the expectations of what I should be doing. Yeah. And I asked this to both to the people I had to report to and other senior stakeholders, but I asked to my direct report, and I asked also to the developers working in the teams, the engineering manager, the teams under my supervision. And that was useful because one interesting thing that I didn't think about before is when I was talking with the developers themselves, I had one-to-ones with them. Some of them were surprised. Someone at your level is talking to us. It's like, he told me that they thought, they said, what's wrong with it? It's just normal. We are people. The other thing is when you talk with people that are on the trenches doing the work, you actually get to know the situation much, much better than if you talk with the senior stakeholders. Yeah? Senior stakeholders generally see what they are told, yeah, but they don't really see reality. All the everyday reality that is really important for you to do your job is to engage with those ones. So these are the things I did, and things work out pretty well.
I do have a challenge for you though. Would you have done anything differently if that wasn't for remote working?
No, because it would have been actually easier. I would have been in the office and would have gone to harass people in person, which I do if I'm in the office. So with remote working, somehow I had to send messages, wait for people to answer me, especially at the beginning. So I don't think it would have been a challenge.
Because what I was thinking and what you were saying, obviously, all the correct things to do, but that would be part of your normal sort of introducing yourself. With remote working, I think it's really important to establish your presence, which what you said, introduce to match the face with the name and get to meet the people, the people that you're going to work to very closely, and having build that foundation for your network.
One thing that I did very deliberately was meeting the people reporting to me and the teams before others. So I wanted to send the signal, you are guys, you are the people that count. So I told every single person there, look, I'm here. Of course, we cannot talk every day because I was busy like everybody else. But if you need me, any of the developers they are working for me, if they needed me, they could send me a message and I would make time for them. And I honored this commitment. I had situations that because I wanted to send a strong signal that I was there to help them. Yeah, not there to crack the whip or to do anything silly. It's just trying to be useful so they could do a better job. Yeah.
I think it's a great point of like the big thing that's super important is just listening. Like when you're starting something new, your job is to listen, not necessarily to act straight away. And you rarely get a time, like when you're starting something new, to be able to spend that much time not in fires, putting fires out, doing, trying to balance stakeholders. So I think it's really precious, and it's something like whenever I'm onboarding managers into my team as well as individual contributors, I think one of the biggest things I'm like, you're listening, you're not necessarily acting straight away, but also like taking time to absorb and knowing in a remote environment that that can mean anything. That can mean like going for a walk and thinking about the things that you learned in that day. It could be, just doing it and slightly, changing your times and how you work. Whereas in an office, it's like you're going to be there 9 to 5 or whatever, they tell you to be. And I think also then outside of the kind of people that you would typically meet, your own team, I think it's also a really good time to meet people who you may not work day to day with, and you may not have a chance to interact. You not necessarily have a chance to, but you have a lot more time when you're onboarding. And so trying to figure out like who's the most interesting person at this company who's just doing lots of different things or would have a good knowledge of like what's happening overall. And I find that quite fascinating when starting something new and trying to like understand how the cogs work across things. It might be something that in an office organically would happen, right? You're getting a coffee or whatever, and you bump into these kind of people and you have like a short 5-minute chat. Whereas when you're remote, like just looking at the org chart and basically throwing a dart at it also could work, just pick someone that is far away from your team. And I think that's some things that I've done or I've told and kind of worked with my team to do as well. I think makes onboarding a little bit interesting, but knowing that it's time that you can't get back again is really good, and using it to listen.
Yeah, there's an app in Slack called Donut, which kind of creates a random one-on-ones among people interested in participating, and that's been fun in the previous company.
Yeah.
So, people talked about, obviously, like the importance of listening and understanding the people and all that. That makes tons of sense now. For better or worse, I have always been founders, which means like I was always the first in the org. So when I watch, like when especially the senior leaders, when they're brought in, for one, like they have so much, they only have some time window before they can start instigating the change, and they are brought in to drive a change. And at that point, you need to start crushing some eggs and whatnot. And I just wonder how people do that effectively, because you're a new leader now. If your report is only like a 6 or 10 people, yeah, you can meet with everyone for an hour and it feel like a good enough conversation. But if you have like a 300 people, well, like you're not going to be meeting everybody, and you need to make a decision that creates some impacts to everyone. That must be pretty scary thing, like doing so right after you come in. So I'm curious to hear from people who are doing more of those things. Like how do you build enough confidence that your hunch that this needs to change is the right one?
I think articulating why, right? Like, and that's why I think listening at the start, when you have that brief window, is so important, because then you need to be able to articulate if you're going to make a change, particularly if it's a very big fundamental shift. Being able to understand and be able to articulate that vision of why it needs to happen is, for me, like the most critical thing. But I don't know. I would love to hear what other people say.
Yeah, I agree. The why is important. Is that the people need to understand. Yeah, I don't even believe that if you instigate change, I'm really not convinced about the fact that the people don't like change and they want to stay in the way they are. Usually, what people don't like is to lose something. So if they don't understand the why, they only see what they may be losing if things change. Yeah, if instead the why is clear and there is something for everybody, you have a better chance to succeed, if you like. Of course, depending on the scale of the organization and the scale of change, some people will lose, but you have to manage this in a way that is very deliberate. Yeah. So if you know who are losing and why, you can do something about that. But just doing things without explaining people and asking them, just trust me, is the right thing, is a sure way to fail miserably.
Trust me, I'm an engineer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, so I'm going to introduce last question from the audience. And Inta is asking for a recommendation. What material, book, blog, podcast would you suggest to check to learn a better approach to lead a team?
Everyone is looking their shelves.
So I can tell my take on it is I had a few seconds ahead. So I would just say read several approaches, see what you relate to, what you what fits your the way you think, what you like, what you don't like, and adapt. As you said earlier, there is no one size fit all. Then you should look for what you find correct or that fits your character.
I have my answer as well. I'm choosing Radical Candor by Kim Scott. There's also a short YouTube TED Talk about giving better feedback and how you do that in a kind way. So that's mine.
I was going to mention the same book. So
I'm going to mention something completely different. So there is this one written by John Amici. I don't know if you know this one. This is an excellent leadership book, The Promises of Giants. And then there is this one that is the most agile book ever, but nobody ever quotes him, 6 Simple Rules. So this is interesting because it's actually how to help changing an organization in the way that makes sense. Basically, the rules are around how do you make people work together so that the change will happen? How do you create a system of incentives that will allow people to work together in the right direction? Yeah. So avoid the situation, we need to work as a team, but in our organization, we have beautiful silos. Yeah. I report to a manager, I have some incentives, KK reports to another one with different incentives, and they tell us it's fundamental that you work together for the success of the company. Guess what? We will ignore each other unless the incentives are aligned. Yeah. And so this book is about how you actually make this alignment happen in a way that such that everybody wins. Yeah.
I love it. It's a physical book.
I have a recommendation, which is a book called Conscious Business from Fred Kaufman, head of talent of LinkedIn. Conscious Business. From also the second book is The Revolution of Meaning. It's also very good, but I will recommend the first one, the Conscious Business, Fred Kaufman.
Okay. Mutala, anything you would like to add?
Well, I would say staying open-minded, perhaps. I don't have any golden source that has all the answers, or at least I have not come across. I'll check out the books recommended, but just staying open-minded, adapting with change, and embracing the change and taking the situations as we go. Being open to shift ways of working, shift the tooling, and staying human at the end of it. If I think of any, particular source that I'd like to recommend, I'll do that later on.
Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Nice
Bye.
chatting to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.